Good morning, and welcome to the first annual Water Lily Women's Luncheon event to benefit the services of Stillwater Hospice. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on this special day to reflect, remember, recognize, and celebrate each one of us for the roles that we have served, are serving, and will serve as caregivers. I'm Melissa Long, and I have been involved with Stillwater Hospice since 2016. I've served on their board of directors, on their development committee, have assisted with events, and have been a longtime supporter and ambassador for the work that this amazing organization does each and every day. I understand the importance of caregiving, as I've experienced it during different seasons in my own life. And I am currently serving as the primary caregiver and point person for my wonderful, almost 93-year-old mom, whom I watched lovingly care for my dad when she was about my age. But she wasn't on her own. The wonderful people of this very organization were with her, me, and my two brothers as we took care of our dad at home. Mom remarried, and 17 years later, my wonderful stepfather became ill, and we again turned to Stillwater Hospice. They have simply been indispensable in my life, and that is why I am so glad to be here today to support them. I invite you now to go ahead and enjoy your salads in one another's company, as the main course will be served in just a few minutes. Today's program will begin at noon. And at this time, I'd like to invite Suzanne Moats, Chair of the Stillwater Foundation Board, to please join me on the stage to provide invocation for today's meal. Thanks.
It's a pleasure to have all of you here today. I'm excited to be with you as we celebrate our first Water Lily Women's Luncheon. Though I've served on the Stillwater Foundation Board since 2019, my connection to this organization goes back nearly 70 years, to my time as a student nurse at St. Joseph Hospital. As part of a public health class, I had the opportunity to shadow one of the organization's nurses as she made her rounds. I was impressed with the help and support she offered to her patients in their homes. Today, I'm even more impressed by the growth and evolution of that small organization and its staff. Now known as Stillwater Hospice, it serves a large part of Northeast Indiana, and as healthcare in this area continues to evolve, we will see even greater demand for its services. But never forget that, like our water lily icon, our strength lies below the surface. Turn a water lily over and you will find the network of its strong support system on the underside of its leaves, reaching far down into the earth. For our water lily, that support system is our staff, our volunteers, our donors, all the people in Northeast Indiana who help us to provide nursing, palliative care, and grief services to all in need of them. Consider the many blessings we have been given this day: close friendships, a wholesome lunch, an inspiring program, and the rewarding opportunity to serve our communities in enduring and truly meaningful ways. While we are a group with diverse faith traditions, we recognize a need to thank the power in our life greater than our own. Please bow your heads for a moment of silent prayer as each of us expresses gratitude and thanksgiving to her God in her own tradition. Thank you. And as Julia would say, bon appetit.
Hello, I'm Leslie Friedel, and I am the CEO of Stillwater Hospice. I am so honored to be standing here in front of you today at our inaugural Water Lily Luncheon. Over the last year, I've had the opportunity to join together with women at community events, and the camaraderie and fulfillment I get from being in a room full of supportive and caring women has made such an impact on me. As we started to have discussions and think about expanding our mission, the plan to bring these women, all of you, in a room together gave us such energy and inspiration. This room is made up of mothers, daughters, friends, sisters, caregivers, leaders, all holding many of these titles at the same time. At Stillwater Hospice, 91% of our staff are women. We care for more female patients than we do men on hospice services. In looking at our over 125 volunteers, 85% of them are women. We are led by an all-women executive team, and both our organization and foundation boards are either led or co-led by a woman. Our hope is that you walk away today knowing that we are all a support system, listening ear, and friend to one another. We will all play a vital role of caregivers at some point in our lives. In fact, most of us serve in this role as I stand here today. Throughout our time together, I will share about our history and services. The reality is, no one is Googling for these type of services prior to needing them. My hope is that when you leave here today, you can be a resource or hope for someone facing the hardest role we all play, a caregiver. In 1888, a group of generous Fort Wayne women formed the Ladies Relief Union. At the time, it was the only charitable organization in the city not sponsored by a church. Its goal was to help the sick poor of Fort Wayne. The organization soon after established the Visiting Nurse Committee that used wagons and carriages to take food to the ill. Dr. Jesse Calvin, a pioneer and advocate for improved sanitation and indoor plumbing in Fort Wayne, started speaking to women's groups from every church in the city about community needs and enlisting their help to help raise money to hire a trained nurse. An organizational meeting was held on March 1st of 1900, and from that, the Visiting Nurse League was born. Anyone who has been following our Stillwater Hospice journey over the last few years knows that we've really taken the March 1st date to heart. It was on March 1st in 2020 when we officially partnered with Family Life Care. It was on March 1st in 2022 when we announced our name would change from Visiting Nurse to Stillwater Hospice. And on March 1st on this year, we announced that Kosciuszko Home Care and Hospice would be joining Stillwater Hospice. Our very first nurse was Miss Josephine Schatzter. She received a salary of just $10 per week. If you happen to know of any nurses wanting to join Stillwater Hospice, our pay range has taken quite a big hike since 1900. Josephine would ride her bicycle through town or take the trolley to visit patients and families in their homes. Our dedicated team of physicians, nurses, social workers, home health aides, spiritual counselors, and volunteers have the same dedication and compassion that Josephine encapsulated at our very beginning. I want to now provide a huge thank you to our corporate and individual sponsors for today's event. Each of these sponsor levels have a tie to nursing, the establishment of hospice internationally, or Stillwater Hospice history. Please join me in recognizing our sponsors who helped to make today possible. The Nightingale sponsor, named after Florence Nightingale, who is known for her role in modern nursing. Three Rivers, Fort Wayne Medical Oncology and Hematology, LC Nature Park, and Midwest Pipe and Steel. The Schatzter sponsors, named after Josephine Schatzter, our very first nurse. Advocare Systems, Ambassador Enterprises, American Senior Communities, Ashton Creek, Burn Ready Mix, and Corsica Technology. Donovan CPAs, First Merchant Private Wealth Advisors, Home Care Home Base, MKM Architecture and Design, Steel Dynamics, and SIM Financial Advisors. Our Devlin sponsors, named after Isabel Devlin, the organization's very first director, hired in 1923. You can see we are beyond excited to have 25 individuals and corporations who have joined us at this giving level. Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you for your generosity and support of Stillwater services and programs. I would like to take a few moments to share about our mission at Stillwater Hospice and the different ways in which we serve. A term that you may or may not have heard before is palliative care. As someone is diagnosed with a life-limiting illness but may not be ready for hospice, our team is able to walk alongside them and ensure comfort and guidance through their journey. We offer palliative services with our physician and nurse practitioners at our clinics in Fort Wayne, Berne, and Marion. We also offer home health that focuses on chronic disease management. Through our clinics, we guide individuals when they are trying to determine what is the next best step in their healthcare journey. We are also able to help with symptoms such as pain and anxiety that may come along with chronic disease. We walk alongside and support them to ensure they feel support and comfort. Hospice is a type of service, specialized care, that is available to anyone who has a life expectancy of 6 months or less if their disease were to follow its normal progression. This individual is not interested in pursuing any additional aggressive curative treatment. Hospice services provide 24 access to an RN to assist with any needs the patient or the family may have. We admit patients 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Hospice provides a patient to be cared for with dignity and respect. Our hospice team includes a physician, RN case managers, LPNs, social workers, spiritual counselors, certified nursing assistants, and volunteers. Hospice helps to take care of the entire person in a holistic way, looking at social, emotional, and symptomatic issues that may arise. Our team encircles the patient and the family to ensure that they are supported through life's most vulnerable period. We help to create meaningful moments with both patients and families. Regardless of diagnosis, any individual with a life expectancy of 6 months or less can be admitted to hospice services. Hospice care can not only provide a better quality of life for patients, but in many cases, allow them for an even longer quantity of life. In addition to the very diagnosis that a patient may have, we care for patients of all ages. We care for individuals who are a few days old to over 100 years old. Established in 2001, Hospice Home is a freestanding hospice unit dedicated to serving those that are in need of the most heightened level of hospice care. This 14-bed unit provides support for hospice patients who may have symptoms that are unable to be managed in their own home. They may be coming from a hospital setting and in need of the excellent care our hospice team can provide. Hospice Home feels just like home, equipped with family areas to gather and reflect. At Stillwater, we have a robust volunteer program that includes services such as Pet Peace of Mind and We Honor Veterans. Through the generosity of our supporters, we are able to offer Pet Peace of Mind to our patients and their pets. Pet Peace of Mind is a care model for the pets of seriously ill patients, including helping orphan pets find a loving home when necessary. At Stillwater Hospice, we assist with identifying each patient's pet care needs in a practical way by utilizing our volunteers to help patients with their pet care needs. This can include taking the patient's pet to an annual exam for vaccinations or by assisting the family by finding placement for the pet once their loved one passes away. Stillwater is also pleased to take part in the We Honor Veterans as a way to honor our patients who are members of the armed services. We match our veteran patients with a veteran volunteer who visits them in their home and presents them with an American flag blanket and a certificate to thank them for their service. We are always looking for additional volunteers to join our Stillwater family. So if you are interested in learning more, please stop by our informational tables today once our program concludes to meet some of our volunteer team. We also provide an extensive array of offerings through our Peggy F. Murphy Community Grief Center, which Tracy Martin will be sharing with you a little later in our program. I want to thank the members of our Board of Directors, Stillwater Foundation Board, Development Committee, volunteers, and staff for making today possible. Also, a special thanks to Emily Borkholder, one of our music therapists, who provided us with such beautiful music as you made your way to your table today. I would now like to introduce you to Stillwater Hospice board member, community volunteer, mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, Kim Murphy, to share more about her caregiving journey.
Rosalind Carter, former First Lady and the founder of the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving, once said, "I like to say there are 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers." But the crazy thing is, only such a few people, particularly women, identify themselves as caregivers. Caregiving is a vital role that many women take on, providing support and care and comfort to family members, friends, and loved ones. Caregiving can be physically, emotionally, and financially demanding, often a very lonely task. But even on the dark days, it brings joy and fulfillment. And I'm here to share my personal story with you. And I'm going to try not to cry. At the age of 38, my husband, Augie Gonzalez, was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of cancer called synovial sarcoma. We had just had our 3rd child, Sophia, a few months prior to his diagnosis. And as you can imagine, for any young family, that news floored us. We subsequently spent the next 5 months balancing day trips to the University of Michigan for doctor's appointments and chemotherapy sessions. Now, this was on top of both of our full-time jobs, taking our 8 and 10-year-old boys, Nico and Alex, to school, to sports practices, to travel soccer, as well as doing grocery shopping, taking care of the lawn, picking up groceries, whatever. And oh yes, let's add in also while breastfeeding and pumping milk any chance that I got. Luckily, we were able to arrange for surgery to take place in Fort Wayne, making it somewhat easier to handle everything that was going on. Surgery was required to remove the tumor, and it was in such a position that while removing it, they had to remove half of his lung, part of his sternum, and part of his chest wall as well. Life was temporarily disrupted for us for several weeks, but it gave him time to recover and to finish out the chemo, and he did pretty well after that. We then spent the next 4 years on an emotional roller coaster of good news, bad news, which new tumors developed, which required chemo and/or radiation, as well as 3 additional surgeries. Not only were the 2 of us caregiving for 3 children under the age of 10 when this first happened, but I went into an additional caregiver role for my husband, helping him get through the nausea and the vomiting, dealing with the hair loss and the painful burns from radiation, driving him or accompanying him to doctor's appointments, trying to encourage him to eat and figure out which foods he could handle since he was losing weight and lost his appetite. Now, Augie, a healthy, outgoing, and athletic guy, got through each occurrence pretty well, and life interruption pretty well, recovering quickly and fairly optimistic. But by the end of that 4th year, it left him increasingly frustrated, being poked and prodded, not knowing if new tumors, if death or remission were just around the corner. But we tried to maintain as much of a normal family and work life as we could, and I continued to care for him and the children during each occurrence. Then, in February of 2009, Then in February of 2009, 5 years after his initial diagnosis, Augie started experiencing dizziness and was becoming forgetful. To our dismay, they discovered now a tumor in his brain, and the cancer was coming back with a vengeance. The prognosis was not good. After the brain tumor was removed in yet another major surgery, he was given the option to continue to fight the cancer with additional chemo or radiation, possibly prolonging his life a little bit longer. However, Augie was done fighting. And as much as I wanted him to continue to fight for the sake of me and the kids, I knew it was taking a terrible toll on his body and his mind. And I knew I had to be supportive of that decision. That decision thrust me back into what I will call an elevated spouse and mother caregiver role. He was in palliative care in the hospital for a month until the insurance would no longer cover it. My employer was amazing and gave me the flexibility to get the kids to and from school, to run up to the hospital during the day, all while juggling my work responsibilities. After school or sports practice, the kids and I trekked to the hospital most nights. I remember the craziness of trying to make sure that they had uniforms and snacks and homework done, and figure out if dinner was going to be made at home, eaten at the hospital cafeteria, or in a fast food drive-through. Guess which one they always chose. It was all rather exhausting. But when it was time for him to come home, sometime in March, we ended up converting our den so he could do in-home hospice, and got all the medical supplies and the hospital bed from Cancer Services. That was what he wanted, to be in our home so he could continue to be with his family and so he would feel more comfortable. We really thought it was only going to be for a short time, and we didn't know how much of this we would be able to afford and how much insurance would cover. Now, I should go back and mention that unfortunately, when the brain tumor was removed, because it was in such a delicate spot, it set off a flurry of new medical issues, not to mention emotional issues, that Augie had never experienced before. He became paralyzed from the waist down and couldn't walk. He developed surgery-induced diabetes and other complications. He ended up with a UTI infection a few weeks after we got home, and that was a whole crazy experience that I had no idea what the heck was happening. And if any of you have ever had a loved one go through a UTI infection, good luck. We were both navigating those murky waters and trying to figure out how to make the best of what was going on for the time that was left. Now, at this point, I'd say I had a pretty good experience of being a caregiver, AKA mom, for 14 years. If you've had children, especially boys, you know how chaotic and difficult it is just to handle everything with them. But as I mentioned, caregiving took on a whole new world for me that year. Insurance paid for some in-home hospice care, but it wasn't round the clock. So I had to learn to do what the nurses were doing for him, and that became my part-time job when I came home from a full day's work. Because he was paralyzed and bodily functions didn't come out naturally, I had to learn how to clear out his bowels, and I will not go into graphic detail about that. How to run a catheter, give him insulin shots and medication, test his blood sugar. I changed soiled sheets and bathed him while he remained in bed, checking daily for bed sores. Little old me, back then weighing probably about 115 pounds, I had to learn how to transfer him in and out of the car, into his wheelchair, and the bed, which one terrible night, while he was having that UTI infection and was experiencing confusion, he tried getting out of bed, forgetting that he was paralyzed, and fell on the floor. It is really hard for me to put into words the angst and confusion of, first of all, not knowing what was going on because we didn't know that it was a UTI infection at the time, but also the struggle I had trying to get him off the floor and back into bed and having to depend on one of my sons to wake him up in the middle of the night to ask to help for this. The chemo and the radiation, the weight loss, and the body changes, the dependence on me to move him around, all the things that I had to do for him as his wife that he was so embarrassed about, with the lowest point for the both of us perhaps being the bowel clean out, had taken the last shreds of his dignity. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of information 14, 18 years ago when you Google searched balancing children, work, and dying spouse. This was before most social media, before blogs. I didn't know anyone who knew anyone who had dealt with something similar to this. All marketing materials and articles we could find centered around hospice and care for older people, not the 40-year-old professional working woman with 3 kids and a 42-year-old dying husband doing in-home hospice. The hospice nurses helped with treatment and care, but they couldn't provide me with applicable resources for our ages and our situation. By the way, it was not Stillwater Hospice, but I sure wish I would have known about them at that time. What people aren't prepared for, nor was I by any means, is all the effort and loneliness that it takes to give someone a comfortable death at home. We felt like we were on our own and we were scared. As many of you have experienced, or will experience when you are a caregiver, mental health, depression, anxiety takes a toll not only on the patient, as was certainly the case for my husband during these up and down times, but it took a toll on me as the caregiver, as his wife, as a mom, dealing with keeping his spirits alive, making sure I gave him all of his medication at night, trying to figure out what the next few months held in store for us, while also trying to keep my shit together for the kids. Sorry for the language. I learned that being in the moment, no matter how hard, is the best gift you can give your loved one. In sickness and in health. It was difficult to be thrust into a quasi-nurse caregiver role for Augie. Most days, I felt more like a tired nurse rather than a wife. As a woman and his wife, I yearned for his touch and our normal day-to-day interactions. I missed sleeping next to him, getting that full-on body hug when we woke up in the morning or when he came through the door. His attention on me. I missed sex and having normal conversations about work, the kids, what was going on in the world. I would crawl into his hospital bed to snuggle with him and watch TV sometimes because we both needed that connection. That was caregiving for both of us. I felt like I had to be Wonder Woman and take on everything, and I wasn't good about accepting help or asking for help. I wanted my kids to keep a pretty normal life: soccer, baseball, friends, video games in the basement, but also to spend as much time as they could with Augie. It wasn't easy for the boys, since they were now 13 and 15 and really understood what was going on. There's a great deal of your own created pressure to make the most of the remaining time that you have, because each moment spent together could be the last. Now, I want to clarify. I did have family help from time to time, and of course, the hospice nurses came in once or twice a week. But it was difficult to give things up and ask for a break, and I wanted to stay in control. I didn't get a lot of sleep, particularly because I kept a baby monitor on in the room so I could hear if he needed my help throughout the night. And just like a baby, any noise that he made awoke me, and I was always on guard for noises in the house or from Augie. At times, I felt failure as a caretaker and as a mom. I would lose my patience. I would break down crying. I was scared, and I was tired of doing everything. And I questioned, why me? Why us? To this day, I feel really selfish for those thoughts. But I know better. Those are normal feelings. It was a burden I lovingly did for Augie, just as I would for my own children. That summer, he started getting better, and things were looking up, and we thought he had turned yet another corner again. Physical therapists came to the house to help him start walking again with the assistance of a walker, to learn how to step into the shower, how to sit down on the toilet. He could transfer himself from the couch to his bed to his wheelchair or make himself a meal. He could stay by himself all day long, was clear-headed, and making plans to start talking to his insurance clients again. We had meaningful moments with family and friends, and he was even able to get to some of the boys' games. And Sophia was so excited to show how she could ride her tricycle on the sidewalk while I pushed Augie in his wheelchair behind her. But, and here comes the next roller coaster dip. In early October, a new scan revealed that another tumor had quickly grown in his brain in just a few months. His spirits dashed yet again, and really, all hope gone at this point. He didn't want to have surgery to remove it. His physical therapy sessions stopped. He started making plans to sell his insurance business to a partner, and we started planning what life would be without him. We wrote each other a special love note on all the things I will miss, and it makes me smile and cry to have that piece of paper today in his handwriting. A videographer also captured Augie's individual message to each of our children, so they too could have a special connection after he passed. Over the course of the next month and a half, he became less engaged in conversation and struggled to hold a smile. And if you knew Augie, his smile and glittery eyes were his trademark. He began sleeping more and more and started shutting down. Near the end of November, during one of his more lucid days, unbeknownst to me, he had called his family members from out of town, and they started showing up to the house in the early evening. And Augie was talking and laughing, and they were having a good time while he remained in his bed. I remember being slightly annoyed because I didn't know they were coming, and of course I was trying to get dinner going for the kids, trying to make sure that they had their homework and everything ready for school the next day, and I wasn't planning to entertain. God, I feel terrible about that to this day, being so annoyed. But what I realized in hindsight, after they left and he asked the kids to hop into bed with him, was that he was saying his goodbyes without actually saying goodbye. Over the course of the next 2 days, he barely awakened and his breathing became more shallow. I spent a lot of time sitting next to him, holding his hand, giving him gentle kisses, and reminding him, as if he didn't already know, that I loved him. The hospice nurses came back to the house to help guide him and me through his final days. And on November 20th, 2009, Augie passed away at the age of 42. I was there to watch him take his last breath in our home. And we had shared a life together for 19 of those years, and I poured myself into caring for and loving him. Hospice and palliative care are critical components of the healthcare system that provide comfort and support to individuals and their families during the end-of-life journey. To support women in caregiving roles, it's important to recognize the value and contributions they make to the caregiving workforce, including hospice and palliative care, just like the nurses here at Stillwater Hospice. And to provide access to resources and support systems for people of all ages. It's also important to raise awareness of the unique challenges faced by women in caregiving roles and to advocate for policies and programs that support their needs including flexible work arrangements, access to counseling services, and accessible childcare outside of normal hours, and of course, supporting women's financial stability. In closing, if you are a current caregiver, I commend you. Stay strong and ask for help, or at least accept the help that comes along, and try not to be in control. If you'll eventually be a caregiver, I hope you learned some new things from today's event. Most importantly, to ask for help and seek out all the services and resources that Stillwater Hospice provides. And when you are the one who needs caregiving, accept it and ask for help. It's important to prioritize and be realistic about what you can and cannot do. Being involved with Augie's caregiving made me learn about some of the inner strengths and abilities that I didn't know I had 14 years ago, that I continue to carry on to this day. Joy and fulfillment comes as part of the caregiving journey, and I'm humbled that I was able to walk alongside my husband, Augie, during his journey. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters really is love. And speaking of love, today I am happily remarried to another wonderful man, Chad Murphy, and I gained 2 bonus daughters. Our house was full again for another 12 years with 5 active, independent, and beautiful kids. Augie would be so proud of Alex and Nico and Sophia. And I'd like to think he is of me too. With that said, Chad and I will be empty nesters in the next few months. As Sophia, the last child in the house, graduates from high school, and she's ready to fly the nest. Guess I'll just have to wait for grandkids now for my next caregiver role. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support of Stillwater Hospice.
Well, I'm certainly glad they provided Kleenex at the tables. Kim, thank you so much for sharing that personal and moving story. I'd now like to introduce to you a dear friend of Stillwater and member of the Stillwater Foundation Board, Tracy Martin. She's going to share some information about the Peggy F. Murphy Community Grief Center. Tracy.
Takes a brave person to share a story like that. So grateful. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak on a subject that I am passionate about: support services for those who are grieving the death of a loved one. I stumbled into this arena 34 years ago when a friend's almost 6-year-old daughter, Erin, died unexpectedly. I knew nothing about death, and Erin's funeral was the second funeral I attended. After the service, my husband, John, handed me the memorial card, and he said, "Dave and Gail, Erin's parents, are going to need their friends now because everybody else's life is going to go back to normal, except theirs never will." He knew that to be true because his dad had died unexpectedly when he was 10 years old. So I listened to Gail's heartbreaking grief, her frustration over not being able to find support for her surviving children, and her fear that no one would ever remember that there was an Erin Farah. 6 months later, at a National Junior League conference, I heard about a children's grieving center in Cincinnati. I brought the idea back to the Junior League of Fort Wayne. They said, "Let's do it." And in October, we will have been open for 30 years. We had a lot of help from the community and some people in this room as well that helped to get it started. I've now volunteered at Erin's house for 29 of those 30 years with the 10 to 13-year-old kids that beat me up in the volcano room every other Thursday night and I've made many referrals to Aaron's house. This has given me relief to know that while I can't fix somebody's grief, I can't make it go away, but I could give them a safe place to grieve their loved one. Aaron's house, however, serves families who have children between the ages of 3 and 18. Where could I make referrals to those who have suffered the death of a loved one that didn't have children in that age range or didn't have children? And then in 2015, along came the Peggy F. Murphy Community Grief Center, whose mission it is to serve adults in our region who are grieving the death of a loved one. And let me tell you, I have made a lot of referrals. Oops, this just moved. And I've made a lot of referrals. And actually, as you heard, I just went on their foundation board after promising my family, telling anybody that I could meet, that I was not going to go on any more boards after I retired. But the mission is so incredible, the people are so incredible that it's just an honor to be there. That is for sure. The Community Grief Center's programming provides at no cost individual counseling, support groups, and grief programming for adults who have had a loved one die. And again, they do that at no cost. And how do they do that? Because of people like you in this room and people like me. In 2022, the center provided over 1,400 individual counseling sessions. Nearly 70% had no connection to Stillwater palliative or hospice programming, with the cause of deaths occurring from suicide, homicide, car crashes, COVID-19, drug overdoses, and natural causes. And this is worth repeating. You do not have to have had a loved one go through hospice or palliative care with Stillwater to be a part of this. In 2022, this year, the Innovative and Compassionate Grief Team has expanded their complementary grief programming to include amazing programs that focus on journaling, art, and music therapy, and beyond. Grief is the natural reaction to the death of a loved one. Grief is as natural as happiness. It is a process, not a course of action. And as long as someone is not hurting themselves, somebody else, or something else, it's all normal, no matter how not normal that might not feel. So you may be asking, if grief is a normal, healthy reaction to a loved one, why would somebody need the Peggy Murphy Grief Center? Well, everyone grieves differently, and this is worth repeating. Everyone grieves differently. I have volunteered with the 10 to 13-year-olds at Aaron's house for 29 years, and I've never seen two kids grieve exactly the same way. But sometimes well-meaning friends and others will tell someone who is grieving what they should do to get better, how they should do it, and when they should simply move on. And this stops that healthy, natural grieving process, which can have some unhealthy results down the road. And this is where the Peggy Murphy Grief Center comes in. A safe place to grieve without judgment, organically allowing the individual to process their loved one's death in their own way and in their own time. The Community Grief Center is an important resource that is available to every single individual in our community, whether you're grieving the death of a loved one or you want to learn how to support someone who is grieving. The center is located on a hill in the most beautiful setting, with fireplaces and waterfalls, meeting rooms that overlook the wooded property. It's along the trail system with beautiful gardens to walk through, to grieve and to heal. And even if you're not grieving, you should go and walk through it. It's absolutely wonderful. I encourage you to take a tour and get to know the Peggy Murphy Community Grief Center. I assure you it's not a scary place. And if you don't want to go by yourself, give me a shout, I'll go with you. It's just absolutely incredible. It takes a supportive, welcoming resource like the Grief Center to walk along someone who is grieving the death of a loved one. And it also takes a village of knowing what to say, what to do, and what not to do. The center can help all of us be a part of that village. I encourage you to utilize their resources. And on that note, if I may, I'd like to offer a few things I've learned over my years of volunteering at Aaron's house on what a friend can do to support someone who is grieving. Listening, caring, and acceptance help in the healing process. Listen, listen, listen. It's worth repeating. People love sharing memories. Ask about their loved ones. Write a letter sharing what you remember about the loved one. Fear not to, quote unquote, intrude. Failing to reach out is far worse than not reaching out at all. Mark your calendar. Grieving people are grateful for regular calls or invitations from you. And give people a lot of grace when they don't answer your phone call, when they don't return your text. Sometimes they can't get out of bed. So give them a lot of grace and just keep reaching out. Someday they'll reach back out to you. Sometimes the grieving person wants to talk about their loved one. Sometimes they want to have fun. Both are good. Let them lead the conversation. Remember to acknowledge birthdays and death dates. And most importantly, refer them to the Peggy Murphy Grief Center and utilize it yourself on how to support someone. When you leave today, visit the informational tables in the lobby and take a stack of brochures. Leave them in your car. Take them to the office. You never know when you're going to meet someone and how handing them that one brochure can be a lifeline to somebody that is drowning in a sea of grief. I hope you decide to support the Peggy Murphy Community Grief Center financially, by volunteering, and most importantly, by making referrals. It is now my pleasure to introduce the woman who co-chaired the campaign to make the Peggy F. Murphy Community Grief Center possible, Stillwater Hospice board member and community treasure, Nancy Stewart. She's going to present our first ever Water Lily Award. Community treasure.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And I guess I probably need to quickly tell you how I got involved with hospice. I have a very dear friend, or had a very dear friend, Ruth Ann Swint, who was a nurse at hospice. She called me up one day. She says, Nancy, I need you to come in here and help me organize a supply closet. I went, okay. I spent 2 days with her while she told me, the organized one, to put this syringe next to this piece of tape, next to blah, 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 blah. Anyway, we got it all organized. My Ruth Ann ended up passing away at the hospice home, and I was delighted to be able to co-chair the Grief Center campaign with her husband, Bob, and the rest is history. Today, I am absolutely so pleased to have the honor of presenting the first ever Water Lily Award. This award recognizes an individual, foundation, or corporation who has made a significant contribution to Stillwater Hospice with their time, talents, or treasures. The award recipient will have shown a dedication to supporting women in their various seasons of caregiving, as well as being an ambassador for Stillwater Hospice's palliative hospice and grief support services. Before I announce this year's recipient, I want to share a little bit with you about her. Loving and caring are the two words most commonly used when describing our recipient. She has been a devoted volunteer her entire life. She has given many years of service to the Girl Scouts, her parish, and Bishop Luers High School. In May of 2010, she became a volunteer with Stillwater because she saw the compassion and comfort that hospice home provides to patients and their families. Over the years, she has had many volunteer roles with us. She has provided loving care and kindness when sitting with hospice patients. She has contributed her excellent organizational skills by assisting with administrative tasks in our Human Resources Department. and she gives empathy and encouragement to those who are dealing with grief by making bereavement calls to the families who have had loved ones on our services. She is always willing to help whenever she's asked. She is resilient, brave, gracious, understanding, confident, funny, and always has a smile. She certainly is a shining example of what a hospice volunteer is, totally committed to our mission and goals. And now I'm pleased to say that this year's Water Lily Award goes to Becky Henry. Will you join me up here, Becky, please? Becky is saying I don't have to talk, do I? And she wishes to express her heartfelt thanks. She's changed her mind.
I'm very humbled, and I'm not the only one who does all kinds of things. There's so many give in all kinds of different ways, and I'm going to take this for the team because it's just not a one-person thing. Everyone is so wonderful. I just love my time that I've spent with hospice, and well, I still call it visiting nurse. Anyway, thank you all very, very much. I'm very honored. Thank you.
And now we are certainly excited to share with you a video created by Stillwater Hospice to show all the faces and stories of caregiving.
What a beautiful video. And I know a lot of you have been touched by not only that video, but by our speakers and our presenters today. If I could just say one other thing that hospice helped my family with was after my father and my stepfather passed away, they came in and told us what to do next. Because if someone, whether they die at home or they die at hospice home, it's like, who do we call? What are we supposed to do with the medication? What's the next step? And that's another service that hospice is there for you, and they're to walk alongside of you in that part of the journey as well. So I hope that throughout today's program, you were able to reflect and remember those whom you have loved and lost. And I'm hopeful that you were able to learn more about how the services that Stillwater Hospice offers can be a resource for you today and in the future. As we near the end of our program today, I hope you will take time to look at the pledge cards that are at the top of your place setting. You'll see there are options to give through check or online through the QR code. I hope that you will join me in making a gift today to support Stillwater Hospice and their services. You can see on the screen behind me that the frontline caregivers of Stillwater Hospice thank you so much for your support. We pour ourselves into so many other people and activities that at the end of the day, our cup may be empty. I hope that you can take time to remember that to be able to care for someone else, you must start by caring for yourself. As you leave the event today, I encourage you to hand any donations that you would like to make to Kelsey Wheel or Emily Lahr, located in the back of the room. We want to thank you in advance for giving to Stillwater Hospice. In addition, please stop by some of our informational tables in the MIrro lobby and learn about our services. Meet some of our staff members and learn about how you could volunteer at Stillwater Hospice. There's lots of opportunities, many of which were not even talked about today. You can't believe all the ways that you can give back. So thank you, all of you, for being with us today to recognize and celebrate our seasons of caregiving. Thank you for being the heart of Stillwater Hospice, and have a beautiful day. Thanks.